Zephyr is one of the most overpowered Warframes you're not using. From limitless damage scaling to the strongest weapons platform in the game to being practically unkillable, she does it all. And today, I'm gonna prove it. But before we get into that, I'm giving away my old Archetytron ribbon in my Discord, so if you're interested, come join, link in the description. Zephyr is one of the most slept on Warframes. Over the past few years, she had a measly 1% pick rate across the entire game, and honestly, that makes no sense to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let's break down her passive and her abilities, so you understand why Zephyr is so absurdly strong. Let's start with Zephyr's passive. It reduces gravity while she's in air, and while airborne, you gain an added 150% crit chance. Essentially, this acts as modded crit chance, making it an extremely powerful passive. There's an augment for this, but I would recommend against using it. It negates the passive synergy, making it a waste of an Axelar slot. With this passive alone, some weapons can jump into the next crit tier consistently, which is pretty insane. Next up, we have Tailwind, Zephyr's first ability. You can use it in two ways. First off, as a movement tool, letting you dash in the direction you're facing, or if you hold the button, you can hover mid-air, or second, as a brain-dead room nuke, aim at the ground, dive bomb, you deal damage at scales of height, which on its own is kinda meh, but there is an augment called Target Fixation that lets you stack damage indefinitely, eventually reaching damage cap. Personally, I hate this playstyle, I don't use it. I have better ways to deal damage cap, but if you like it, then go for it, I won't stop you. Then we have Air Burst, a solid grouping tool with an added extra pistol damage bonus if you use the augment. This has two ways to play it, either you tap it and you pull enemies together, or you hold it and you send enemies flying away. A niche thing it does, it opens up enemies to finishers, allowing you to play some niche melee arcanes like Melee Crescendo reliably. It also deals some damage, but honestly it's barely worth mentioning. However, if you use the augment Airburst rounds, your pistols get an additive 500% damage buff, which can be insanely strong with the right setup. Now onto Turbulence, which makes Zephyr practically immortal under the right conditions. It blocks all incoming projectiles with some important exceptions. First off, Eximus abilities completely ignore it, meaning they can still hit you. And second, explosive AoE damage. This can still hurt you if the explosion happens too close to you. I'm talking about bombards and such, those can still hit you if they explode next to you. Other than that, as long as you stay airborne, practically nothing can touch you. And finally, the tornadoes. Frankly, where do I even start with these? Zephyr and her allies can target tornadoes to distribute total damage, including critical hits, and status effects to all enemies within. A neat side effect on top of that, crit damage is doubled. The doubling happens after everything. Tornadoes adapt their physical damage types, impact, puncture, slash, into elemental types like cold, heat, electricity, toxin, etc. based on the incoming damage. The highest elemental damage from any source determines the tornado's types. Each tornado tracks absorbed damage, it only considers the highest elemental damage when adapting. For example, if a tornado absorbs 500 corrosive damage and 750 radiation damage, it will switch to radiation. If multiple element types are equally applied, the tornado will choose based on alphabetical order. Using an AoE weapon, you can hit multiple tornadoes at once, allowing enemies in range of the tornadoes to potentially receive up to 11 damage instances from a single shot if you're playing the augment. For maximum damage, you have to play Zeta, because it adds another void damage instance which interacts pretty insanely with the tornadoes. Don't believe how ridiculous the combination is? Look at this. If that doesn't prove it, I don't know what does. Since I left out the subsumes, let's talk about them and where to put them. There's two different abilities you can replace, either Tailwind, my personal go-to for subsumes, or Airburst, if you prefer keeping mobility over grouping. As to what to subsume, there is a ton of options here, so let's break it down. Top tier picks include Eclipse, Roar, Zeta. These are the obvious choices. My personal recommendation is Zeta, simply because of the insane interaction with tornadoes. That said, all three are great. Then we have Silence. If you want to be completely immortal, Raffle Advance. If you want to buff your slam attacks to an absurd level, an armor strip like Pillage or Terrify, if you don't want to rely on green Arcane Shards, Sickening Pulse or Expert at Suffering for niche DOT focus builds, Dispensary if you want to go full attack helicopter mode and never touch the ground, or a damage one ability like Sentient Wrath, Petrify, etc. for an extra added damage boost. I also have some untested ideas which could work, though you'd have to try yourself. So, the first one would be a Well of Life with a dive bomb build. This should technically just nuke entire rooms and tile sets. if you mod it correctly. Technically, Mark for Death should also work the same. And second one, this may be a bit copium, is Trinker Pillars from Corvex, sorry if I butchered that, with the Tornadoes augment. If this works like I think it would, it could be a hilarious stationary nuke, though Ino has told me these are mainly used for CC and the damage is questionable at best. So these two setups, you'd have to try them and see if they work. But enough theory crafting, let's move on to what you're really here for. Now, let's go over how to mod Zephyr. I'll be giving you two different build templates for different purposes, but since Zephyr is extremely versatile, feel free to mix and match however you like. First build is gonna be high range, high strength for comfy steel path. Depending on how you want to play it, there's 4 flex spots here. Transient Fortitude, Rolling Guard, Brief Respite and Prime Sure-Footed. So let me clarify, if you play an AoE weapon, I highly recommend keeping Prime Sure-Footed, else you might spend more time on your ass than actually playing. If you didn't know it, thanks to the Tornadoes you can take advantage of some Arcane mods like Arcane Stretch or free energy regen. You could play the Naira set here for more slam damage, more of the basic stats like strength, duration or range, or even something like the dash mods for more movement. It hardly matters and is basically all up to you. Alright, next up is the build that I'm using in the background footage, my level cap setup. There's 2 flex spots here. You could either run an extra augment or go for more range and duration, depending on what you're going for. Personally, I'd keep Prime Sure-Footed, but if you really want to swap it out, go for it. You could also go full range and duration if you're going for defense type content. I'm speaking max range, max duration. Just keep in mind, range does not affect the tornado pickup radius, it only extends airburst's range. There's a lot of room for experimenting here, but I won't drag this section out too much, so do whatever you'd like. Next, let's go over the arcanes and arcane shards. Let's start with the arcanes. I recommend using a mix of mod augmented or mod efficiency in the first slot, depending whether you want more ability, strength or duration, paired with a base damage arcane that suits the weapon you're using for DPS, something like precision. For the arcane shards, my setup is 2 Tauforge Reds. These could either be strength or duration. I'm personally using strength, 1 Tauforge Yellow shard for casting speed, and 2 green shards for the armor strip. If you don't need the armor strip, you can swap it out for more red shards, boosting either primary status chance or secondary crit chance, depending on your weapon of choice. Now onto the longest segment of this video, let's talk about weapon choice. Let me be clear, Zephyr can make anything work. Seriously, whatever you throw at her, it's gonna be fine. That said, here's some of my personal favorites that I personally use on a regular basis. Since Crit, Blast and Zata's Whisper is usually the strongest mod plus Subsume combo for Tornadoes, this is usually the combo that I go for maximum damage. Let's start with primary weapons. My daily driver is always gonna be Kuba Ogress with a Heat Progenitor. I assume this is one of the only weapons that can't do level cap, but for base steel path it's absolutely nuts. Next up, we have the Coda Bass Assist. I made a short about this one, so I won't go too deep here. It's a multiplicative gun CEO weapon that benefits massively from Raw or Eclipse. Zata has kind of a weird interaction, so I don't recommend it for this specific one. This is also modded for Blast. Then we have the Strun Incarnon. This shotgun has always been insane, and the Incarnon just makes it even better. I use these Incarnon evolutions, and you can mod for either Heat or Blast, both work great. Then we have Paris Incarnon, probably one of the most well-known Zephyr weapons there is, so I won't spend too much time here. Shoot your bow, everything dies. These are the Incarnon evos. And here is the mod setup. There is one last honorable mention, that is Trumna. It's a cool weapon if you can tolerate the miserable reload time. Alt fire interacts really well with Tornadoes, but no dedicated build here, just mods for either heat or pure corrosive. Next up, we have the secondary weapons. A quick note on the arcanes before we get into it. Everything works, but I recommend Cascadia Overcharge. Alternatively, you could play secondary Innovate, but it currently has a bugged interaction with Blast, allowing for some ridiculous crit stacking, so use it with caution. First on the list, we have Prisma Angstrom Incarnon. This is the weapon I'm using in the background footage. Absolutely melts level cap. Seriously, what the hell? Here are the evos, and here is the build. Then we have Bronco Incarnon. This is basically an angry tea kettle, or, if you so will, a secondary Strun. Pretty solid. Here's the evos, and here's the build. Then we have the Spare Incarnon. These things are ridiculous. If you haven't tried them yet, you really should. They are really fun. Here's the Incarnate evos, and here's the build. Then we have Atomos, a little flamethrower with a kick. It's hilarious for base steel path, but also for level cap. This is modded for Blast, Electricity, for maximum fun, though you could change this up. Then we have the Riot 848. The new SMG is also pretty funny. It deletes groups instantly, but has a weird FPS bug that I haven't figured out how to replicate yet. So if you're having heavy FPS drops, it may be because of this gun, because the bullets linger after they shouldn't be there anymore. It's a weird interaction. It's the same thing as Ruvox. Also it has the same bugged interaction. I don't know what causes it. This is built for pure electricity. Yeah, it's funky, but give it a try. And then finally, we have Tenet Blinks. If you want some boring single target damage, though personally, I don't use it much on her. This has a Toxin Progenitor, and this is the build. As you can see, I hit 1 billion damage on a demo unit, which, let's just say, is not the easiest thing to do. Now we get to the category, which is just stupid fun. Melee weapons. Let's start off with Arcatitron, my goat, my baby, the best slam weapon, IMO, period. Also, don't forget the ribbon giveaway. Influence plus slam has an insane interaction with tornadoes. It is just ridiculous. Pablo, please don't nerf this, it is unwarranted. Nerf influence if you want to nerf something, but not slams. Then we have Jet Kitak. I love Arcatitron. When it comes to pure room clearing though, Jet Kitak is king. With the right setup, its KPM matches that of the Ocucore Saren. You'll need Vulcan Blitz mixed with Zata's Whisper, but once you get it working, this setup is absolutely crazy. Then we have Tenet Exec and Zampotas, exactly same setup, though Tenet Exec with a Heat Progenitor. These two are both slime weapons, but you can play them in two different ways. Either you use Melee Crescendo, if you want to go for level cap, or you use Melee Afflictions if you want to do general content, cause you're not gonna stack Crescendo in every mission. So Afflictions is just the go-to if you don't want to play Disruption. Because if you didn't know it, Melee Afflictions does not work on Disruptors because they can't get ragdolled. So, if you don't believe me, I'm gonna tell you what they can one-shot. This includes Archons, the pre-nerf Scaldra Blobs, the ones with insane damage attenuation, I one-shot those, Necromech demos, as you saw earlier, and anything with damage attenuation just goes poof. Not even Yareli can do that, and she can hit 2.1 billion damage on a demo unit that has 90% damage attenuation and damage reduction. So yeah, that is just nuts. A funny side note though, if 2 or more Zephyrs place their tornadoes at the same time, the damage stacks so hard that it overflows and stops working entirely on damage attenuation. We notice this happening in Belly of the Beast with the sister spawn that you get from collecting the beacons. It's hilarious, but also totally busted. Also an honorable mention for melees. Any glaive or Ellie melee with melee influence scales insanely well, I already said that, and that is already widely known. Now finally, for the last kind of weapon, let's talk about primers. Your choice of primer depends on your DPS weapon, but the general consensus is if you're playing a primary DPS, play Compressor, and if you're playing a secondary DPS, play Phage. Both of these are insane primers and prime at insane speeds. Here are the builds, though I've already talked about these 1,000 times, but yeah, if you need the builds, here they are. Speaking of things I've talked about 1,000 times, here's the companion. If you need more details, go check out the companion guide. It includes hound parts and other companions. So yeah, highly recommend watching it. If not, well, here you go. And that's it. That's my updated Zephyr guide. My last one really didn't do her justice. Back then, I was still figuring things out with this whole content creation thing, and honestly, that video was a mess. To those of you who have been watching for a while, I hope you're loving the more structured video style over my old chaotic, one take, no script approach. Yeah, it's more work, but I love this way more. Even if some people feel the need to unnecessarily hate, if you do that, you're cringe. If all goes as planned, one of the upcoming videos should be a really good one. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace out.